So now you can really start because the basketball game to end all basketball games has definitively been decided.
Oh, so the basketball game to end all basketball games has ended.
Yeah.
That's good. That's
This is
good. I'm
true.
glad to hear it. More people will probably start, coming in now.
They'll be starting to leave after a while because they'll be, wanting to know what's going on in Westeros back there. But
Yeah.
you have HBO Go, so you can take care of that later, right?
I was like 4 or 5 days ago. I did an interview with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar on stage in New York, and the day before, the guy called and said, "Well, we should do some stuff about basketball. We should have some stuff about basketball." I wasn't there, but my publicist was on the phone, and she said, "Well, we can't because Walter Mosley doesn't know anything about basketball." And Kareem said, "That's right. I don't want anybody who knows anything about basketball. I want to talk about books." It was really fun. I like that.
Well, let's talk about books. Let's talk about your books.
Okay.
Okay. Easy Rollins.
Mm-hmm.
It's about 25, thereabouts. Well, the series is about 25. Easy's a little older than that.
Easy's 48.
Yeah. A lot can happen in 25 years. I'm thinking about when you first started with Devil in a Blue Dress, or when that was first published, and what's happened since then. Interestingly enough, when you first started, well, not when you first started, but when Devil first started, you came on a lot of people's radar screens. A lot of mystery people knew you anyway. They'd been hearing this underground buzz about this guy who was writing this interesting book about life in Los Angeles. But you really kind of exploded when this guy named Bill Clinton was pictured having a copy of Devil in a Blue Dress tucked under his arm as he went off to, I think, Martha's Vineyard on vacation. And he said, "You got to read this guy Mosley. This is amazing stuff." Did life change for you after that?
I don't know. That's a hard question to answer. Who's more important?
Easy Rollins or Bill Clinton?
Bill Clinton or Denzel Washington.
I think I know the answer in this room.
Or you might say Don Cheadle even.
Yeah, Mouse.
So I think that the thing that Bill Clinton, Reagan read Clancy, and Clancy sold millions of books. That didn't happen to me. But it is true that every journalist in the world knew my name because of that, and still, like, half of them still do. So it's easy to get interviews, like from people, which is good. If you want to sell books, it's nice to have interviews. But so I think it was a big impact. I think probably the film was a larger impact, but and it was nice. I got to go to the White House a couple of times. Stole some china.
Take us back to the Los Angeles that Easy found himself in Devil in a Blue Dress. It's a different LA than the LA we live in now in some ways, and in some ways, things are still pretty much the same.
Yeah, because it's always changing. And change is the same. So, in that way, it's true. What you had is all over the country. My father, when I asked him one day, I said, "Dad, when you went to World War II, were you scared?" And he said, "No, I was not." And I said, "But it was the Americans fighting the Germans." He said, "I knew that." He said, "What I didn't know was that I was an American." I thought that if the Germans came up and said, "Where's the Americans?" I could say, "Well, there's some white gentlemen over there.
The guy from Kentucky over there, yeah."
You guys got a problem with them, And then he said, "But damn, if those Germans weren't start shooting at me."
And he felt American real quickly.
Shooting at me defined me as an American. Mm-hmm. So those people who got that definition, from me, from the Germans shooting at them and the French women loving them, mm-hmm. they said, "Damn." When they got back home, they said, "I really can't live here anymore." And a lot of those people came, to Southern California, Central California. San Francisco calls it Northern, but it's Central. And they started to have that life, that extraordinary life where you could actually make progress for yourself and for your children and for your grandchildren. All you had to do was work 3 jobs, and you did that in the South anyway, And they just didn't pay you for it. But, like, here, you buy a house, nobody's going to come take your house from you. Start a business, nobody's going to come take your business from you. There was a sense of freedom. So, well, are you equal to white people? So, oh, man, don't be crazy. But I got what I need, and I think that's what you felt, a kind of an optimism that was unheard of. It was even like, kind of like an immigrant optimism, people who had that feeling.
Yet, Easy Comes has experiences with law enforcement that leads him to decide that he is out of the South, sort of, but in the South, very much in terms of how he's treated by the LAPD at that point. What's changed?
Well, now it's 2016 instead of 1948. I was really, I was like, like a lot of like white journalists will call up black writers nowadays, Gary, other people, and I say, well, how come the black writers aren't writing about all this new stuff that's coming out with the, digital cameras of, seeing black people, black men getting, killed? And I said, don't you read my books? I mean, what's wrong with you?
Before, yeah.
And they said, but this is happening a lot. And I said, it's been happening for 450 years. It's like what's that you think it's new because of the cameras. And the ironic thing is like the camera is fueled by coltan, columbite tantalite, which is a chemical that comes mostly out of the Congo. And because of the mining of that material, we have over 10 million dead Congolese and hundreds of millions of rapes of females from the age of 5, to the age of 90. And everybody else is like, it's brand new. It's not brand new, and it hasn't changed. We talk about like, liberation and freedom and all this other stuff, but we have millions of people in prison and 3 times that number on their way back to prison. People of color, Native Americans, Hispanic Americans, African Americans, and poor whites. I mean, we have a lot in common with poor whites. They just don't know it,
When Easy comes to Los Angeles, it is a segregated city. You've said often that LA isn't so much racially segregated or ethnically segregated as it is economically segregated. Was not, though, Easy's LA back in the late 40s, early 50s also severely racially segregated?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's really you could work anywhere, but there's only certain places you could live. Mm-hmm. The ability to work everywhere, though, slowly opened things up because people had to work together. It wasn't in the South, like in the South or even back east. I remember I used to work in a building back east where the electricians union was. Not only was the electricians union all white, it was all Irish.
Yeah.
That was like,
yeah.
And when you have like a city with a consistent population that's not growing physically, people can actually be segregated by race even in labor. But LA, you couldn't afford that. You needed people to work. You couldn't say, I'm not going to hire that man because of his color. I'm not going to hire that woman because of her race. That doesn't work. And because of that, LA was both very, advanced, forwardly advanced, but also backward because of, Chief Parker and his crazy notions.
It seems like Easy, over your 25-year span, has moved in some of the same patterns that a lot of Black Los Angeles has. He started out in Watts. He eventually did well enough. He moved to View Park, moved from there to like Pico Fairfax, around that way, all the while going north and west as the city's Black population, a lot of it has gone in that direction, and all the while doing better and better, which is why he's been able to move north and west. He has his own business by the time we get to Charcoal Joe.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about what he's doing.
When you ask that question, you mean like in business? Or?
In the business that he started.
Well, he's actually now started a detective agency. Mm-hmm. and he has Whisper Natalie, a character who appeared in the Fearless Jones novels, and Saul Links, a Jewish detective married to a black woman who's from Los Angeles. Also, Fearless, it turns out, is going to be working for him a little bit. He's a little bit in this novel, which is a lot of fun. Watching Fearless and Easy together, Fearless, one of the few men that Mouse doesn't want to tangle with, Say, I'll leave that motherfucker alone. He let me alone. So he has a business. He might be able to be engaged. His children are both doing okay in life. Things are good. It's 1968. His assistant, Niska Redmond, is studying transcendental meditation. Things are all right. Things are all right. He's almost happy. Smart enough to know that he shouldn't be.
When you started out, it seemed to me that Easy was anxious, maybe a little scared. By the end of your, I guess I'd say by Little Green, he was starting to change his mind about that, starting to get angry enough that he was no longer as afraid as I think he had been. Is that right?
Yeah. Like in 1948, he sees like a white woman and he says, wow, she has a fine ass. I wonder if I'm going to get killed right now.
Because he's looked at it and appreciated
it.
Right,
he's looking at it and he's going, oh shit, there's somebody looking at me looking at it? And and then she smiles and it's like, oh damn, what?
That could really get me in trouble.
Yeah, and he's willing to get in trouble. So and I think by 1968, number one, the response to that history has gotten smaller. The place he lives in is a little bit differently defined. You just have to watch out for certain kinds of things, but not as much as you did in the Deep South. The problem, of course, is in the Deep South, people just say, well, you shouldn't be around here, and that's enough. You leave. And now, number one, people don't tell you when you're in the wrong place. And number two, even if they do, Easy's not going to leave because he, discovered in the war that he's an American, and so he should have the rights of an American. So it's different and it's not different. I mean, it kind of goes back and forth. Things are different until somebody hits you upside the head, with a billy club, and you say, oh, damn, things are bad again. Shit, what happened? To me. This book is very much about that. The young man in question who's being blamed for this murder, he's lived a really good life, mostly with white people, incredibly well educated, incredibly intelligent. He's gone to Columbia and Stanford and all this other kind of stuff, and he's never had anything happen. All of a sudden, all his racism comes down on him, and he doesn't even understand it. He doesn't get it. He says, but wait a second, this is not the law. And Easy has to explain to us, no, this is the law. It's just that you didn't know it before.
It wasn't written. It's still the law.
Yeah.
So Seymour was post-racial before post-racial was post-racial.
Wow. Post-racial.
Well,
where are
he's
the commas going? Oh, no, go on.
He's saying, look, I haven't done anything. Why should I be afraid? It's like, this is L.A. It's the LAPD. It's in the 60s. There's a dead white guy in front of you and somebody has caught you standing over his body. It would be a prudent thing to be afraid. And yet I have faith in the system until the system takes him to jail and shows him that we have a two-tiered system of justice for depending on who you are as a citizen.
Right. Yeah. I mean, post-racial is such an interesting thing. Like people like will say, we were talking the other day about transcending race, which is something I don't, mind. You have to understand. Like one of my strongest beliefs is I don't believe in the existence of white people. And I mean I think it's easy to explain because all you have to do is say, well, what is a white people? And there's no definition. Honestly, it's just like, well, these are the people we agree who are white people, and these are people who agree are black, and they could actually be the same color, but one is...
And sometimes are.
Yeah, sometimes are, and, so but the whole idea of transcending, race is it's the job of so-called white people to transcend race. Black people don't have to do that shit. It's white people have to transcend the notion of being white people, and then America will be fine. America will be great. So
America will be great again.
Huh?
America will be great again.
Be great again. I'm
sorry.
going to vote on that.
It kind of blew my own circuits. Well, a lot of this happened when Ali died, that you saw a lot of sports writers and a lot of just writers and essayists say, the great thing about Ali was he transcended race. And a number of people would say, no, he's still black, really, he is. But there was great emotional investment in assuming that Ali had transcended being who he was in the 1960s.
But what they meant was he helped them transcend race. That's true. He helped them transcend their own prejudices. He didn't change his name back to Cassius Clay. He didn't all of a sudden chop off some white woman's head and get in a car and drive off. What he did was he was steadfast in his beliefs and his commitments, and in that America changed. They didn't mind him being Muhammad Ali anymore. They didn't mind him being a Muslim anymore. They didn't mind how brash and outlandish he was.
And they also came around to his way of thinking about the war. A lot of people.
Well, yes, because they understood. Oh, he's right. And they agreed. They said, well, he really is the greatest, because they actually understood the poetry of that statement. So yes, there was a transcendence, and he was a part of it, but he wasn't the one who transcended. It was them.
He liked to say that America caught up with him eventually.
Well, they didn't quite catch up, but they
They're
got closer.
moving in that direction.
Yeah, they got
moving
closer.
in that direction. At one point, Easy stopped. The series stopped, and everybody assumed he was
Dead.
a goner. Yes, dead. What brought you to that point, and what made you decide to bring him back?
I was writing Blonde Faith and having a lot of fun. I thought there was some really kind of romantic moments in it that I was really enjoying. And it was easy, so everything was really tragic. Like everything was turning out bad, for everybody. Easy lived, but, And I realized that as I was thinking about, future writing, that it didn't seem different to me. It seemed kind of stale, and so I needed to stop. And unconsciously, while I'm writing this, Easy's driving, and all of a sudden he's driving over a cliff. I didn't expect that to happen. But when it did happen, I said, well, maybe this is the right thing, because...
Let me take a break for a while. Well, did you think it was over at that point?
I thought it was over.
Done.
I thought I was finished with Easy. But then I realized some years later that what had happened was I had been writing about the black people of my father's generation, my father, and then all these other people I knew, and so, but I had gotten to a moment in the late '60s that it was no longer about them, that the knowledge I had wasn't their knowledge but mine, and as soon as I understood that, I said, well, I'll just write it from my point of view. So Little Green, is a lot up on the Sunset Strip with all the barefoot hippies walking back and forth. I was one of them, and so like. I thought, wow, now I can still talk about those people, but from my point of view. So I can infuse the knowledge, not the lifeblood, but the knowledge I had with those characters. And so then I could start again,
And at one point, you said you could see Easy growing up to be an old man, maybe sitting on his porch, watching his grandkids play on the front lawn. Is that the plan at this point?
Well, we'll see, it depends on Mouse,
Oh, boy.
He said, I'm in a wheelchair, Easy, but I could still kill a motherfucker.
I would put my money on him.
Yeah, you better watch it.
Tell us a little bit about Charcoal Joe. It opens a couple of years after the Watts riots.
Yeah, 3 years after
rebellion
Watts riots.
Or uprising, or take your pick. And LA is still very much on edge. Why is everybody so,
Well, it's that thing, that happened. Before the riots, people, regular Americans, Donna Reed and all those people,
June Cleaver.
Fred McMurray, they were thinking about, black people, they were a little bit slower, a little better endowed, more, they enjoyed life more, but they understood it less. There was all these things that black people were, and they lived in a place that that was good for them.
Lived over there.
Yeah, and it was good for them. That yeah, sure they could live here, but they don't want to live here. They want, And then the riots happen, and the question from the so-called white community goes out: how many people feel like this? And the answer comes back: well, 99% of the people feel like that, and 1% are really angry. So you better watch it, Nigga might shoot
quick.
you.
Yes.
And it's like, so at this point, people are really nervous because you have like your own memory, but you also have like a almost like a genetic memory of happy darkies picking cotton, and all of a sudden they're pulling Uzis out of their cotton bags, and they said, damn, and they burned down everything. They burned down their own neighborhood.
So they must be angry.
Yeah, let's say you have to watch out. Easy walks into places and sees people reaching for their gun because they don't know he might kill them. And I think that's this world. Now, of course, this is a much deeper world, and the people that you discover in this world, people like Charcoal Joe, Mosley, who's ever present, people like John the bartender, with his kind of secret bar, in the middle of the hood. There are a lot of people living lives that are much, much deeper than that kind of fear that's going on. And a real deep transition. People like Jackson Blue, who's the #2 man at the second largest insurance company in the world because of his knowledge and his kind of interest.
Facility with numbers.
Yeah, I mean
patterns.
you have it's really kind of an extraordinary world and an extraordinary time that we lived in and that we that most of us survived.
It's kind of like now where everything is changing very quickly, and people haven't completely absorbed what the change is. We don't really know exactly where it's going to lead us. We sort of, we can hope. But it's a lot of stuff is up in the air, and that makes people nervous.
Yeah, well, the only thing that doesn't change is the general stupidity of the populace of the United States. I'm completely serious.
Are you talking about
this.
voting trends?
Huh?
Are you talking about voting trends?
No, I'm not. I'm actually talking about just people's history. You ask them, people get really mad and really scared and really upset about stuff, like they used to get upset about black people after the riots, and they have absolutely no concept of the history of the events of the world that we're living in. Like no concept. I talk to people, I say, well, you remember the war between Iraq and Iran. I said, Iraq and Iran? What are you talking about? I said, well, we supported a war. No, we weren't in a war with Iran. So, we were. And it's like, you remember the Wahhabis in Saudi Arabia in the late 40s and our investment in them to control Saudi Arabian oil. They say, the Houthis? But they said, we need the Patriot Act and we need to protect ourselves from terrorism. So, well, the best way to protect yourself is to equip yourself with knowledge. But most people in America have absolutely no knowledge of their own history in the world. I mean, it's not the history outside the world. I'm not asking you to understand who the Afghans are, and why nobody can ever win a war against them. I'm not asking you to understand, Iraq or ISIL or anything like that, but just understand us. That lack of knowledge, I'll take away from stupidity because that's mean. That lack of knowledge is rampant.
Why do you think that is?
I think that that there's an understanding that if you know something, then you realize that you're going to find some kind of responsibility there on your part.
If you know something, you have to do something about what you know?
Yeah, like if you say, oh, it's true that, we're murdering thousands of people every day in the Middle East. If you actually know that, then you have to say, damn, I have I have to feel guilty. It's what so-called white America feels about black America, you know?
Do you think they still feel guilty?
I think unconsciously there's a lot of guilt going on, which, really one of the things that I do to toot my horn, as my father used to say, that my books are about black male heroes. There are very few people who have ever written about black male heroes. There's my friend Gary Phillips somewhere. I hear him laughing. And a few others, but there are not many. There are a lot of people write about black male protagonists, like Ralph Ellison, and Chester Himes, and a lot of people who do that. But heroes, Langston Hughes, there's very few. And one of the reasons that America doesn't celebrate black male heroes is because of an underlying guilt that just has lasted forever. People no longer knowing why. It's like not knowing why people in Iraq and Iran are mad at Americans. It's like, well, let's forget that.
Selective amnesia.
Yeah, and amnesia selected you. It's like, hi, my name's Amnesia.
Is that an American thing, or do people in other countries have the same
I think people in other countries have the same thing. But, one of the things is that when we do that, let's say, everybody feels like that. I said, man, I don't give a fuck what they think. It's what we think. It's us. Let us sit. That's what Socrates, what reason I read is what Socrates says, well, why don't we figure it out? So we can't solve the problems of the world, but we could start talking about it. And it's like, and people have trouble. So, well, why should we talk about it? Because that's the right thing to do.
And it's a move in the right direction.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
exactly.
After
just
a while.
like trying to follow Ali. You move in the right direction.
You mentioned your dad. You've recently written an op-ed piece for the New York Times, which is right around Father's Day. It was a lovely piece about growing up with your dad and some of the things that your dad taught you. What about your dad do you think ends up in your work? Are there aspects of things that he's taught you, philosophies that he's had that perhaps Easy has now, Easy Voices, or is it more complicated than that?
I love my father very much. More, like, really, probably than anyone ever. I love my father. And, he was crazy, which, he couldn't help it. He was like, his mother died when he was 7. His father disappeared, probably died when he was 8. He was on his own from the age of 8. At the age of 9.5, he was a full-grown man, By 15, he was twice man, And he, and he, when you live like that, you're living a kind of an insane existence. But the night I came home from I was out at the Afro-American Traveling Actors Association's civil rights play in the main night of the Watts riots, and nobody came to the place. We all went home, and we drove through, and there were people lying on the streets, people robbing places, policemen running around with shotguns, and I got home, and my father was sitting in a dark room, and he was drinking and sobbing. And I said, Dad, what's wrong? I'm like 13. He goes, Walter, the people out there rioting and fighting and burning. He said, I want to go out and burn, and I want to shoot, and I want to fight, and, I want to go out there. He said, but I know it's wrong, so I'm not going to do it. But I want to go out there and do it. I want to go out there and fight and kill. And he said, but I know it's wrong. And that whole night, he just did that. He drank, and he just did that. And he cried. And, in a way, he shared the things that he shared with me about life taught me what he knew. Not what I should do or what I should be or where I should go or what I should think, but what he knew. And his knowledge, like many people from that experience, was vast. Because, like most people in America don't need to know shit, So I get up in the morning, I go to work, I do my job, I come home, and that's that. My wife loves me, my children love me. Probably not true, but anyway, I'm straight, but maybe not. But the thing is that you know, it doesn't matter because you believe in what you believe in, and there's no reason. Like for instance, if a police car is driving behind you, or your boss says, "I'd like to speak to you for a minute," you know, there's no reason to be afraid. There's no problem if you see a woman with a fine ass walking down the street and you look at it, you know. But for black people, and you know, and the further back you go, the harder it is. Knowledge had to be vast just in order not to get killed that day, you know. And so my father shared that knowledge with me, and I think that that's a lot that goes into my books, and also there's a lot of humor. You know, my father told me a story. You know, that once his first wife, who got in a, you know, was flirting with some guy, and he got a little fresh. He comes to my father. It's a party. My father pulls out his Texas jackknife. Texas jackknife, you know what it means? It's like a regular jackknife, only it's this big. And he opens his Texas jackknife, and cousin Helen, who's the strongest person in the family, says, "I'll kill him, Roy, and I'll be out by morning," because judges never convicted black women for killing black men. It was always the black man's fault. And so she was really good, really strong, but she wasn't very good at a knife, so she swung at the guy and went all the way around and stabbed my father in the leg. Now you see, look at all you people laughing at my father getting stabbed in the leg. You know, but it's true, and they all laughed.
Yeah.
You know, and so there was so somebody tries to kill somebody, stabs my father in the leg, and we're all laughing. And I think that was what he gave me also, the ability to laugh at all the misery. And it wasn't just him, you know, my mother's, the Jewish side of my mother's family, my mother's family, you know, from Eastern Europe, you know, they're laughing about the same things in the ghettos and the shtetls and the pogroms and the, you know, ultimately the Holocaust, you know, but people, you know, like maintaining their humor through things that, you know, other people, if you just pulled them out of their life that they're leaving and they put them in that life, they would like die in 3 days, just from sadness.
Gallows humor. Get you through every time.
Yeah.
I want to ask you finally about something that I think kind of runs through a lot of Easy's books, your books on Easy, which is the whole notion. Easy, you know, started out humbly, but he has a very sharp analysis of sort of American society and what's going on around him. And I think from the first book on, people on the economic margins face just trying to get a slice of the American dream, let alone the whole pie. I'm guessing that's not by accident. I'm guessing this is also an interest and passion of yours.
Yeah. That was a short answer to your question, but yes.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I think we talked before about the book that I have coming out in September, the Folding the Red into the Black. I have a book, Folding Red into the Black. It's one of my little political monographs. It's about it's a criticism equally of socialism and capitalism, you know, because I think both of them don't work, and both of them left on their own become fascism. You know, even in their own terms, like the super capitalists in Los Angeles who own all the big stores won't let any one of us go out in the street and sell candy bars for half price because they make laws against it. You can't do that. And for no reason, you just can't do that. But those are mercantile capitalists. Mercantile capitalists are put out of business by the super capitalists because they want to own everything. Yeah, and the idea of socialism, I mean, bees are socialists and ants are socialists, but we're more like hyenas or dogs or sheep, depending on what neighborhood we live in, you know. And yeah, I couldn't get that book published like forever. And you know, but it comes back to, you know, to me, finally, the idea that you know, talking about capitalism, you know, people in America talking about stupid ideas, you know, think that wealth is infinite, but you know, wealth can't be infinite. Wealth is based on labor, and labor is finite. And let's say that the average income of everybody in the world is like $50,000 in a year of labor, but then you have a billionaire. So like a whole bunch of people with $50,000 got to give up some money for the billionaire to be a billionaire. And then there's another and another and another, and a corporation. And then all of a sudden you realize that like 10% of the country has taken all the money that we made that year, and 90% of the country is in debt. And and as Tennessee Ernie Ford says, another day older and deeper in debt.
Yes.
It's like that's kind of like where we go. And I think that it's easy when you've been a black man working as a sharecropper to know exactly what that means. Because the commissary store, that's what they do to you. You made $10,000 and you spent $11,000 making that $10,000.
So you're always in the hole.
You're always deeper in the hole. And they own you. Like you're not really a slave, but you can't move. If you want to go up to Mississippi, you got to leave at night, because they're gonna stop you in the daytime.
Very quietly. Are you worried about the direction the country's going in right now? People from Europe just, write in and they go, "This is insane. What are you people doing?" I don't know that the British can talk at this point. They're in the middle of their Brexit fomentation, and I guess that'll be resolved maybe this week. But
I think what the country's going through is very healthy. Because, it's like one of the things that both the Republicans who've kind of like held the lid down on the people who like have been voting for them, and the liberals who completely ignore the issues of middle America. I think that Trump coming out and getting those people to talk, and getting those people to say, "This is what I hate and this is what's happening to me." We're never going to start a dialogue until you know what people are feeling like, and up until now it's all been kept quiet. And so to allow people to express themselves, I know, I disagree with a lot of things a lot of people are saying, but I got to hear it before I can actually have an argument with it, And him being a mouthpiece for all of this agitation which has been developing all these years, especially 8 years with a black president. It is kind of like a good thing. The problem, of course, is that Americans don't understand the notion of democracy. They think democracy is voting once every 4 years and then coming back and say, "Well, what did you do?" Not understanding the 25,000 lobbyists in the D.C. area have talked to your representative every day and have written their laws for them and have offered them jobs once they no longer are elected in their office. And so those are the people who own and run the country. And if we don't do something every day like they do something every day, we were talking about that, right? When FDR, when people from the labor movement, people who were working for racial equalities would come to speak to FDR, they say, "This is what's wrong, and this is what's wrong, and that's what's wrong." And FDR says, "That's right. I really like that. Now go out there and make me do it." That's what FDR would say to people. And that's the truth. He didn't need to say it because that's the truth. And that's what the corporations know. That's why they have all those lobbyists.
I think we're at the point of this conversation where I get to say, "Go out and read for us."
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I'm going to read to you.
He's going to read to you. And after he reads, we're going to have a couple of minutes for questions, if anybody has any.
Okay, I'm going to read you the first chapter because the first chapter is one that's very short. And also, I always read the first chapter because then I don't have to do a lot of explaining, But, this is fun because, I've been reading this in New York and St. Louis and San Francisco. And, they don't get it. You'll understand what I mean when I say that. They don't get it. But reading it here, people will actually get it.
Because we're so much smarter, or because we know the neighborhoods?
Because you're so much smarter. On Robertson Boulevard, a block and a half north of Pico, just south of Whitworth Drive, on the eastern side of the street, there once stood a 3-story turquoise building that had been a posh home in the 30s. But the owner died, leaving his real estate-rich, cash-poor relatives to turn the domicile into a commercial property. By 1968, the first floor had become an antique furniture shop where 50-something Mrs. Ina Holloway sold old sofas, chairs, and dining tables of dubious pedigree to middle-aged women from Cheviot Hills. Women who wanted to make their interior decorations equal in style, if not in value, to their wealthier counterparts in nearby Beverly Hills. The second floor was occupied by an insurance brokerage firm owned and run by Harry Mornhiro Harada. To hear him tell it, Harry sold insurance on everything from life expectancy to pet health to marriage vows. Harry's wife and daughter and son and daughter-in-law all worked in his second floor office. Only Harada's Gaijin son-in-law no longer worked for the old man. This because he had been imprisoned for a crime he confessed to, embezzlement. He, Arnold Sandy Patterson, was convicted on evidence that was not vetted by the defense or the prosecution, evidence that would not have stood up under scrutiny. The police detective who interrogated Sandy accepted his confession of having stolen money that Harry's strawberry farmer client, Gentaro Takeda, had entrusted to the company, $131,247.29. The money Gentaro gave had been in cash, and the day that everyone agreed that Sandy had taken it, he was under the knife at Cedars of Lebanon for an emergency appendectomy. Indeed, it was Harry himself who had taken the money, believing that his client was senile and probably wouldn't remember anything about the transaction. So 3 days later, when the elderly Mr. Takeda returned with his son, Ishii, to ask for the money back, Harry felt that he was safe in saying that he had never received the cash in question. Mr. Gentaro had once told him, Harry claimed, that he wanted to have Harry invest some money, but he never had given him the cash. After the Takedas had left, Mitsu, Harry's daughter, told him the day after Gentaro had been there that he returned saying that he had not gotten a receipt from her father. Harry was at a convention in San Diego, and she looked up the transaction in his day journal, saw that no receipt had been issued, and had filled out one of the pre-signed receipts that Harry kept in the safe, just in case the family had to do business in his absence. That right there was the moment of truth for Harry Harada. Gentaro didn't seem to remember any receipt, and Ishii hadn't mentioned one. Harry's greed outweighed his morality. It convinced him that the dotty old man probably lost the voucher and that the money, all cash, could not be traced. He told his daughter to forget the receipt and the visit. When Ishii pressed charges in Gentaro's name, Harry stuck to his story. But 3 months later, when the receipt Mitsu provided resurfaced, a warrant was issued for Harry's arrest. He had testified under oath that he had never received monies from Gentaro and had therefore broken the law. Mitsu begged her husband to take the blame for the good of the family. Mitsu explained that even if her father was able to stay out of prison, he'd lose his license and his customers, impoverishing the entire clan. And so stout-hearted Sandy confessed. There was no trial to speak of, so the elderly Gentaro, who was indeed senile and unreliable as a witness, was not required to appear in court. Sandy admitted telling Gentaro that he was Harry, and the confused old man believed him. Sandy explained about the pre-signed receipts in the safe, saying that he was trying to get enough money to start a business of his own. 4 months after Sandy was locked away, I came to the building looking for office space. Harry managed the property, but his wife, Kikuyu, did all the work. The handsome middle-aged mother-in-law did not seem very interested in me as a tenant, probably because of my skin color, which is a very dark brown. That is, until I told her that I was a private detective. Upon hearing this, she asked me if I could help an innocent man get out of prison. It was a delicate operation. Gentaro Takeda's mental condition had declined further. By the time I became involved, his testimony could no longer be trusted. When asked who he had given the money to, he said, "My son." The money had been returned, and Kikuyu convinced Harry to give Ishii Takeda $10,000 to forego any further complaint. I went to the state's attorney with evidence that they had convicted and imprisoned an innocent man, and so Sandy was set free, and the state decided not to pursue further charges. Kikuyo, without telling her husband, gave my company, Renzel Detective Agency, an unheard of 15-year lease at a very reasonable rate. Harry thought I was overcompensated, But he only said so once because in spite of his dishonesty, he was a family man, and freeing Mitsu's husband brought bliss to his home and to his business. So at 7:42 on the first Monday of May in 1968, I stood out in front of the gaily colored plaster encased building, a professional detective with a bright future and a dark past. 10 months earlier, I had received a questionable windfall of $100,000 in ransom money that no one wanted to claim. I used part of the money to start my own little detective agency with the two best detectives I knew, Saul Links and Tinsford Whisper Natley. Saul was a Jewish detective married to a black woman who had given him 2 sons. He was born and raised in L.A. and was accepted, more or less, in the white circles. Whisper was a Negro from St. Louis who could find anyone, anywhere, given time and resources. Saul Whisper and I were equal partners in the business, and they were repaying the initial investment at $300 a month each. I took in a deep breath through my nostrils and smiled, thinking that a poor black man from the deep South like myself was lucky not to be dead and buried, much less a living, breathing, independent businessman. Our little agency had a separate entrance that opened onto a stairwell made only for us. I took the steps 2 at a time, and I reached the 3rd floor doorway. There I stopped again, happy that I wasn't dead and that soon, if the sky didn't fall that day, I'd be engaged to the lovely Bonnie Shea. "Good morning, Mr. Rollins," Diska Redmond greeted. She was our receptionist, butter-skinned, biracial, and quite beautiful. Niska had worked for Whisper after he saved her father from false charges alleged by some business partner. She was 24 and filled with dreams of a world where all humans were happy and well-fed. "How you doing, Miss Redmond?" "Great," she exclaimed, showing her wide eyes and lots of teeth. I started practicing transcendental meditation. You know, only 20 minutes every morning and night, and you have peace of mind all day long." "That's like a prayer?" I asked. "More like yoga or hypnosis," she said. "How are you?" "Down to 1 cigarette a day, and I walked to work this morning." "Good for you." "Whispering?" Her nod was vigorous and certain. "Nobody with him," she added. His door was open, but I knocked anyway. "Come in, Easy," he said in a low tone. Whisper's face was medium brown with no marked features. You might overlook him even if he was standing right there in front of you. He wore short-brimmed hats of gray or brown without feathers or even a hat band. His clothes were not new or old, natty or disheveled. He only spoke in a low voice, not a whisper, and no one I knew had ever seen his apartment or house. There were some that believed he was married, and one woman I knew swore that she had seen him sitting in the last pew at Lion's Den New Baptist Church. "How's it going, Tinsford?" I asked, taking the straight-back pine visitor's chair that sat in front of his small, battered oak desk. Instead of answering, he looked at me with dark brown eyes that contained a question. "What?" I replied to his unspoken inquiry. "Something up?" "No. Why?" "Something happy about you this morning." "How's that thing with the, what's her name?" I asked, avoiding his question out of nothing but pure stubbornness. "Lolo Bowles," Whisper said. "Keisha Bowles' daughter. You locate her yet?" "Not in the flesh, but I got some leads. You know anybody run one of those clinics get you off drugs?" "Saul's got a guy." Whisper nodded and I stood up. It was often the case that we asked each other questions, most of which went unanswered. We were all private sort of men who gathered information rather than distributed it. Our corporation had been up and running for 3 months, but it felt like years. I had never imagined that I'd enjoy working with partners, but just that one cryptic interchange between me and Whisper felt like something like belonging. My office was at the end of the hallway behind Niska's desk. It had been the master bedroom, making it the largest office with a nice view of a few green backyards. I would have preferred a smaller room, but Saul and Whisper took those options before I finished signing the papers Kikuyu Harada had put before me. My 500-square-foot office had dark oak floors and a huge cherrywood desk given me by Jean-Paul Villard, president and CEO of P9, one of the largest insurance companies in the world. JP liked me and was my good friend Jackson Blue's boss. When Villard heard that I was going into business for myself rather than taking the managerial security job that he offered, he sent the desk over just to show me that there were no hard feelings. I sat down in my padded mechanical chair, leaned back, and took out the little black velvet ring box that held the brilliant cut half-carat diamond set in platinum and gold. In the last year and a half, I had been as close to death as a living man can get and climbed my way back to the world that seemed new and hopeful. I had 2 great kids, a perfect island woman that I would soon propose to, a profession I was good at, friends that I liked, and access to powers that most people in Los Angeles, white or black, didn't even know existed. I had built the kind of life that I wanted. And once Bonnie said yes, everything would be perfect. The buzzer on my desk sounded. Yes, I said, pressing the button on the console. Raymond Alexander for you, Mr. Rawlins, Niska said. On the phone? I asked, maybe a little hopefully. No, dude, Mouse called from the background. I could hear him over the speaker and through my door. I'm right here. Send him on in, I said, thinking there was a reason that optimism didn't come naturally to people like me.
We have time for a few questions. If you have a question, please raise your hand and we'll bring the microphone to you.
Boy, they're so smart.
Sir, you mentioned earlier about Americans being blissfully ignorant about our history. Like, what are your sources? Like, where do you get the knowledge from?
I didn't say blissfully ignorant.
Well,
You just said ignorant.
I said stupid. I said stupid.
Oh, that's so much better.
I think, listen, I'm not like a person who studies deeply. When Ta-Nehisi was talking up here about his father, Paul Coates, Paul and I are very good friends. Paul knows, I know a lot of people who know a lot of things. And so I ask questions, and the big question is, like, why? Like, just why? Or what? Like, for instance, when Colin Powell is pointing at yellow dots in the desert and says that these are weapons of mass destruction, not gas, not nuclear weapons, weapons of mass destruction. Yellow dots are always weapons of mass destruction, or big puddles of urine, I don't know, but it's like one of those two things, and for some reason it wasn't the latter. And so, but I would ask, and I think any intelligent person, you don't have to be knowledgeable, just intelligent, well, could it be anything else? Could it be anything else? And that's what I do. I said, well, what is the reason? Why? When somebody does something, like when somebody shoots somebody, like when somebody slaps somebody, whenever something happens, you always say, well, why did they take that action? And if you ask, and if you read, and if you look, and if people give you stupid answers, like, they don't believe in freedom, or, kind of silly, dumb answers, like they're yellow dots in the desert, you say, well, you can't pay attention to that. You have to pay attention, like, well, human beings have a kind of equality in the world, and we do things for reasons. Our reasons can be wrong. And I think many people who take actions that are wrong. I'm, in no way ever supportive of, for instance, terrorism. But I still have to understand why somebody else might think this makes sense to them. I'm also against dropping bombs on innocent people. But my government does that every day. It's like, I'm against those planes with drones, floating around Pakistan. So the people in Pakistan pray for cloudy days so the drones can't see them. I'm against a lot of things, but I think if all you have to do is slowly accrue knowledge, and it's not that much knowledge, you don't have to go that far to figure things out. And I don't think that I'm smarter or faster or more capable than other people. I think people are afraid of knowledge, and so the first thing I think that one has to do is to stop being afraid of knowing the truth. It's like when your chest is hurting and the doctor says, I think you need an x-ray, and you say, well, no, I think I'll forego that. Well, that's stupid, Hey.
Thank you. Your characters, Mouse, for instance. Do you have a mouse in your life? A friend that you grew up with?
I wish I had
I can relate to Mouse. Do you have a mouse in your life?
Is that your mouse right there sitting next to you? Yeah.
Ted over here.
See, that's what I thought. See. No. My father had a friend who used to hijack liquor trucks, and he would bring like a case of 12 bottles of like whiskey, and he'd leave it at my father's house. Say, hold on to that for me, Rob. I'll be back on at the end of the week. And of course, at the end of the week, my father and had that party and drank a bottle. So there's like 3 or 4. He said, okay, what you owe me? And my father would pay for the 4 bottles, and then he would take it to another place. And this guy was kind of crazy. One day he got into a crap game in a barber shop, normal things for barber shops, and a guy owed him a nickel. And he said, you owe me a nickel. And the guy said, I don't owe you shit. And the guy killed him and went to prison and died there. But the way my father talked about that guy, that always kind of created a mouse for me, But it's not true for all of my characters. There's nobody I know like Fearless Jones, but damn, I love him, And Twill, Lynn and McGill's son, I don't know anybody like that, but I would like to, very much.
Hi, greetings. Thank you so much for coming to Santa Monica. I just, first of all, want to congratulate you for your writing. I'm a 4th generation Californian.
Damn.
My people came here in the late 19s, and you capture Black LA that I know. There have been books written about Black LA, but you capture it. So I just want to congratulate you for that.
Thank you.
I'm a writer. Can you talk about the publishing business and any advice you would give to emerging writers?
Advice I would give to emerging writers is that, writing, if you want to make money, you should go into real estate. And if you want to make literature, you should write every day. So that's the first thing. It's just writing every day and getting there and being hopeful and optimistic. People who succeed aren't the most talented. They're the ones who keep writing. The publishing business, I think I'll say 2 things about it. One general truth is this: the older you are, the more you live in the past. The older you are, the more you live in the past. And the publishing, a lot of the old publishing industry is the old publishing industry is old people, and they're living in the past, and we're living in the present. The present is a lot different than the past, and that's messed up. And the other thing to understand and to remember, the only places that you see Black people working, people of color working, are the places that either the government owns or the government does business with. That's the only places that hire people of color. The government has never given money to publishing, so you don't find any people of color up in there. And so there's a lot of not understanding who you are, even if they're publishing you. Because there's a lot of people of color getting published today, but there's a lot of not understanding who you are, what you are, where you stand inside the thing. That's just something to remember. It shouldn't guide your life. It shouldn't make you feel upset, or I'll be upset for you. Don't worry. So the publishing business. I wrote a book called This Year You Write Your Novel. I'm not really trying to sell it, but it's everything I know about publishing. And I'm thinking right now I'm going all over that book. It's about 90 pages long, big, words, small the big margins, But, write every day, learn how to control narrative, meet people who like to write, like, in workshops or in schools or whatever. Don't ever pay more than $1,000 a semester for anything, because it's not worth it. Just keep that forward motion and it will work. Keep the forward motion and it will work.
2 more questions.
Hi. I fell in love with Denzel Washington's interpretation of Easy Rawlins. I thought it was excellent casting, and we know you want to talk about Don Cheadle, but if you were to do another movie, which book would it be based on, and who could you see playing those characters now?
Well, my 2 friends here, Nate and Josh, are doing the Easy Rawlins series, though I'm not supposed to say that. And they know better than I do. So we'll do the series, and we'll find the right characters to do it. I'm not doing movies right now, like in that way. I'm not, because the movie world is kind of prohibitive, and I'm not all that interested in it. but television I'm really enjoying, and you know, there's so many incredibly talented actors of color who have no money, you know, that I think would be wonderful. And you know, listen, I like Denzel too, but you know, Danny Glover would have done a great job on that thing, you know, because you know, one of the things about Danny is he's like the working man. He's like the blue collar guy, you know. And I see that in Easy. And I agree. I love Denzel's portrayal. But you know, like there's so many incredibly talented men and women actors. You know, Candy Alexander, for example. You know,
Yay.
I mean, you know. That you know that I'm so like I know it's gonna work. Yeah. Was there one more question you said?
The final question?
Final.
It's not really a question.
Well, then we have to. Then you're gonna say something, and then he's gonna find somebody with a question.
Okay, I will make it a question. So, Walter, I just want to say congratulations.
Well, thank you.
I love you so very much, and this new book is an opportunity for me to get a little bit of joy to my soul of reading. I love reading your books. I would like to know, after this book, how many more Easy Rawlings books?
I don't know. You know, it's an interesting question. You know, like I was talking to this Russian writer the other day, and he's a mystery writer in Russia, very, very famous in Russia, and though he doesn't live there, but he's very famous there. And he was saying, well, so you know, you plot out your novel completely, you know everything that's happening, right? And I go, well, actually, I just start writing, and I don't know, I go somewhere, and I don't know. And he goes, what? You don't know? He says, I have planned my series of 16 books. I know the last sentence of every book. I was like, wow, man. I said, I just start writing, and, you know, hopefully I get to the end, you know. And it was so funny because he kept on, because he, you know, those people, you know, like the people who get A's in school, they think they're, you know, that it's going to help them. You know, so I got A's in school. It's like, but every once in a while he'd look at me and say, you really don't? And I go, no, I really don't. He goes, really? I go, no. And so, like, you know, but like my whole life was like that. You know, it's like, you know, the idea, you know, like, you know, it's like if you like go out on a date with somebody, you know, they may be perfectly willing to have sex with you, but you can't expect them to be perfectly willing to have sex with you. You're going along, you see what happens, you know, because life is kind of open, you know. Hopefully, you know, there'll be like another 15 Easy Rawlins novels, but you know, there might not be any more Easy Rawlins novels. I'm not writing one right now, you know. So we'll see, you know, we'll see what happens.
I'm going to read the intro chapter to the book in question tonight, Devil in a Blue Dress. I was surprised to see a white man walk in a Joppy's bar. It's just not that he was white, but he wore an off-white linen suit and shirt with a Panama straw hat and bone shoes over flashing white silk socks. His skin was smooth and pale with just a few freckles. One lick of strawberry blonde hair escaped the band of his hat. He stopped in the doorway, filling it with his large frame, and surveyed the room with pale eyes, not the color I'd ever seen in a man's eyes. When he looked at me, I felt a thrill of fear, but that went away quickly, because I was used to white people by 1948. I had spent 5 years with white men and women from Africa to Italy, through Paris and into the fatherland itself. I ate with them, and I slept with them, and I killed enough blue-eyed young men to know that they were just as afraid to die as I was. The white man smiled at me, then he walked to the bar where Joppy was running a filthy rag over the marble top. They shook hands and exchanged greetings like old friends. The second thing that surprised me was that he made Joppy nervous. Joppy was a tough ex-heavyweight who was comfortable brawling in the ring or in the street, but he ducked his head and smiled at that white man just like a salesman whose luck had gone bad. I put $1 down on the bar and made to leave, but before I was off the stool, Joppy turned my way and waved me toward them. Come on over here, Easy. This is somebody I want you to meet. I could feel those pale eyes on me. This is an old friend of mine's, Easy, Mr. Albright. You can call me DeWitt, Easy, the white man said. His grip was strong but slithery, like a snake coiling around my hand. Hello, I said. Yeah, Easy, Joppy went on, bowing and grinning. Mr. Albright and me go way back. You know, he probably my oldest friend from L.A. Yeah, we go ways back. That's right, Albright smiled. It must have been 1935 when I met Jop. What is it now? Must be 13 years. That was back before the war, before every farmer and his brother's wife wanted to come to L.A. Joppy guffawed at the joke. I smiled politely. I was wondering what kind of business Joppy had with that man, and along with that, I wondered what kind of business that man could have with me. Where you from, Easy? Mr. Albright asked. Houston. Houston? Now that's a nice town. I go down there sometimes on business. He smiled for a moment. He had all the time in the world. What kind of work you do up here? Up close his eyes were the color of robin's eggs, matte and dull. He worked at Champion Aircraft up to 2 days ago, Joppy said when I didn't answer. They laid him off. Mr. Albright twisted his pink lips, showing his distaste. That's too bad. You know, these big companies don't give a damn about you. The budget doesn't balance just right, and you let 10 family men go. You have a family, Easy? He had a light drawl, like a well-to-do Southern gentleman. No, just me, that's all, I said. But they don't know that. For all they know, you could have 10 kids and one on the way, but they let you go just the same. That's right, Joppy shouted. His voice sounded like a regiment of men marching through a gravel pit. Them people own them big companies don't never even come into work. They just get on the telephone and find out how their money is. And you know, they better get a good answer or some heads gonna roll. Mr. Albright laughed and slapped Joppy on the arm. Why did you get us some drinks, Joppy? I'll have a scotch. What's your pleasure, Easy? Usual, Joppy asked me. Sure. When Joppy moved away from Mr. Albright, Mr. Albright turned, took a look around the room. He did it every few minutes, turning slightly, checking to see if anything had changed. There wasn't much to see, though. Joppy's was a small bar on the second floor of the butcher's warehouse. His only usual customers were the Negro butchers, and it was early enough in the afternoon that they were still hard at work. The odor of rotted meat filled every corner of the building. There were few people, other than butchers, who could stomach sitting in Joppy's bar. Joppy brought Mr. Albright's scotch and a bourbon on the rocks for me. He put them both down and said, Mr. Albright looking for a man to do a little job, Easy. I told him you out of work and got a mortgage to pay, too. That's hard, Mr. Albright shook his head again. Men in big business don't even notice or care when a working man wants to try to make something out of himself. And you know Easy always trying to be better. He just got his high school papers from night school, and he'd been threatening on some college. Joppy wiped the marble bar as he spoke. And he's a war hero, Mr. Albright. Easy went in with Patton, volunteered. You know, he's seen him some blood. That a fact? Albright said. He wasn't impressed. Why don't we go have a chair, Easy, over there by the window? Joppy's windows were so dingy that you couldn't see out onto 103rd Street. But if you sat at a small cherry table next to them, at least you had the benefit of the dull glow of daylight. You got a mortgage to meet, eh, Easy? The only thing that's worse than a big company is the bank. They want their money on the first, and if you miss the payment, they will have the marshal knocking down your door on the second. What's my business got to do with you, Mr. Albright? I don't want to be rude, but I just met you 5 minutes ago, and now you want to know all my business. Well, I thought that Joppy said you needed to get work or you were going to lose your home. What's that got to do with you? I just might need a bright pair of eyes and ears to do a little job for me, Easy. And what kind of work is it that you do? I asked. I should have gotten up and walked out of there, but he was right about my mortgage, and he was right about the banks, too. I used to be a lawyer when I lived in Georgia, but now I'm just another fella who does favors for friends and for friends of friends. What kind of favors? I don't know, Easy. He shrugged his great white shoulders. Whatever somebody might need. Let's say you need to get a message to someone, but it's not convenient for you to do it in person. Well, then you call me and I take the job. You see, I always do the job I'm asked to do. Everybody knows that, so I always have lots of work. And sometimes I need a little helper to get the job done. That's where you come in. And how's that, I asked. While he talked, it dawned on me that Albright was a lot like a friend I had back in Texas. Raymond Alexander was his name, but we called him Mouse. Just thinking about Mouse set my teeth on edge. I need to find somebody, and I might need a little help looking. And who is it that you want to? Easy, he interrupted. I can see that you're a smart man with a lot of very good questions, and I'd like to talk more about it, but not here. From his shirt pocket, he produced a white card and a white enameled fountain pen. He scrawled on the card and then handed it to me. Talk to Joppy about me, and then, if you want to try it out, come to my office anytime after 7 tonight. He downed the shot, smiled at me again, and stood up, straightening his cuffs. He tilted the Panama hat on his head and saluted Joppy, who grinned and waved from behind the bar. Then Mr. DeWitt Albright strolled out of Joppy's place like a regular customer going home after his afternoon snort. The card had his name printed on it in flourished letters. Below that was the address he'd scribbled. It was a downtown address, a long drive from Watts. I noted that Mr. DeWitt Albright didn't pay for the drinks he ordered Joppy, but Joppy didn't seem to be in a hurry to ask for his money, though.
The book that I'm going to read from today is called Gone Fishing. It's one of my favorite one of Walter's novels, in the sense that, and I hadn't known the history of it until very recently, that he had written 3 other novels after Devil in the Blue Dress, and then he put this book out. But this book was actually the first Easy Rollins story. This chronicles one teenage adventure of Easy Ezekiel Rollins and his friend Mouse as they go on an adventure. And I'm going to read from the very last chapter. I love this book, and I kind of think I love this book most because it's a youthful adventure. It's the young Easy and Mouse. It's not the characters that we see later on. So let's get into it. And mind you, this is actually the end of the book. So, chapter 16. That was the longest month of my life. Every minute stands out like an hour. Every hour stands out like a day. I met the strangest people and went to places that I could never have imagined. I lost what a religious man would call his soul. Pariah is gone. Miss Dixon died a month after Mouse was married, and her relatives came down from Chicago to split the land. They charged rent on the land, so everyone ran away. They didn't have any money. Mama Jo and Domecq and Ernestine disappeared too. They didn't come to Mouse's wedding. I think that he didn't want stories about Reese's death to be around when he had so much cash. On that Saturday, every soul that I knew in Houston was at the biggest wedding Victory Church had ever had. There must have been 200 people there. Flat Top and Lips brought their band to play at the reception. Little Red was there, and Jellyhead, with his greased back and conch hairdo. All of Mouse's old girlfriends came. Etta's admirers were there with them. It was something else. Etta and Raymond walked up to the gazebo. The minister stood there, waiting. A breeze was blowing, and the pastel silk flags that hung from the roof of the gazebo waved like angels calling out the great day. There were children who could barely hold in their excitements. The women were in fine dress, all of them in tears. I wondered if they cried because Mouse was going off the market, or because they were so happy because they knew how hard Etta's life would be with a man like that. The bachelors were standing around snickering and wondering what being married, what being married meant. Not much in a hurry to test it out for themselves. The minister liked his questions. The minister asked his questions, and the wind blew harder. I stood there next to Raymond. He was sharp as a tack and so cool that you could almost see the mist rising from him. His eye was certain. Etta was beautiful at his side. I do, Mouse said. When the question was asked of Etta, she hesitated for just a second, less than that. And I remembered those boys Mouse had told me about, the ones that killed rats on the docks back down in Galveston. I wondered how well Etta would stand up to Mouse's harsh life, but I was still happy for her. She was taking her chance, and that's all we can ever do in life. The party moved to the social club across the street. Flap Top's trio played music most of the modern age, and we danced and drank hard until the milkman came to join us. Some people left the party to go to morning service in the church. Etta kissed every man twice, and Mouse got a chair and just watched her. He was so calm and happy that it was hard for me to remember him as desperate or mean. Hey, Easy, Odom Chenier said to me when the party had just begun. Hi, Odom. Mouse said you two took my car down to Pariah for a week. I didn't know what to say. He gave me the money. Odom opened up into a smile. I guess you did right. I mean, I could use that 25. He laughed, and I did too. How's your mama, Odom? Well, you know, that's what get to me. Lucinda got that call about mama, but when I got down there, they said they getting called. I had me a good time, though. You know, what they got up there can't compare to the food that they got down there. He patted his solid pot belly. I said, drink up, Odom. Whiskey gonna run all night. Yes, sir. The party was right. People came from all over Fifth Ward and beyond. There were churchgoers and gangsters, day laborers and cotton choppers from the farm. There were Mouse's best friends and people we never knew who just heard about the party somewhere and came by to help us celebrate. And help themselves, Mouse said with a smile. Everyone said it was the best party that they had ever been to, that it was even much more than that for me. I was feeling romantic that night. It wasn't that I was looking for a woman. I had lost my passion for young girls after that night with Joe. Joe showed me something about love. She showed me that I didn't know what it was. But I wasn't feeling romantic towards a woman. I felt that way about my life, the life I had lived in the Fifth Ward for years. All of my friends and the people who could have been my friends were dancing and drinking. Some of them were around Mouse, listening to his wild stories. It was beautiful, but it was my last night there. It was Mouse's wedding party, and it was my goodbye. I couldn't live with those people anymore. They were living on the edge of despair, like those two friends fighting on my street. I had the image that we were all of us in Houston and Pariah, living between Miss Dixon and Mouse. It was a deadly line we had to walk, and the only thing that kept us going was some kind of faith. Either you believe in God or family or love, and I didn't believe in any of those things anymore. Maybe I never had. So I had a ticket for Dallas, Texas in my breast pocket and $100 in my pocket. And I was happy as I could be at that party because I felt safe. I felt safer with that ticket in my pocket than I would have felt with a gun. They couldn't hurt me anymore. Mouse couldn't come banging on my door in the middle of the night. Married women and old witches couldn't seduce me on dirt floors. I needed a place where life was a little easier and nobody knew me. I knew that if I could be alone, I could make it. All the people around me dancing, having a good time, they were just holding me back, wanting me to be in the same old poor easy, not a nickel in my pocket or a dream in my head. I didn't have a thing, just like everybody around me. All the money I had was in my pocket. and all the clothes I had were on my back. That's how life was back then. You couldn't hold me responsible for anything because I didn't have anything. And realizing that, it was time for me to go. Hey, Easy. Mouse strolled up, pleased as he could be. Something else, man. Ain't it? He flashed a smile. I'm really happy you stood by me, Ease. I wouldn't have missed it, Raymond. We shook hands. I'm gonna take me a little trip after the wedding, I said. Gonna see what it's like being back east. Uh-huh. He watched me closely. You think they got something out there you want? We'll see. I was looking at him directly in the eye. You take care, Ease, he said. Those are the last words we spoke.
I went down to the basement. There. I saw a scene that had been a constant in my life since I was a small boy. Black women, lots of them, cooking in the industrial-sized kitchen and talking loud and laughing and telling stories. But all I could see was their hands, laying out plates, peeling yams, folding sheets and tablecloths into perfect squares, washing, drying, stacking, and pushing from here to there. Women who lived by working, brushing the hair of their own children or brushing the hair of some neighborhood child whose parents were gone, either for the night or for good. Cooking. Yes! But there was lots of other work for a Negro woman. Dressing the wounds of the men they started out being so proud of. Punishing children, white and black, and doing God's work in His house and at home. My own mother, sick as she was, made sweet potato pies for a Sunday church dinner on the night she died. She was 25 years old.